Hello, and welcome to Forget What You Learned, a place for families to stop and reflect on the modern state of education. We empower you to challenge your own thinking about today's traditional school system and ask the question, are my kids thriving? I'm Corey Greenberg, a parent in the trenches just like you, and I chat with innovators, experts, and other parents who are changing the conversation, inspiring families to reevaluate how we define academic success. This podcast is brought to you by Pacific Preparatory and Tutor Corps, sister organizations molding education through innovative one-on-one learning for students in today's digital world. In today's episode, we unpack the details and the nuances of a really common struggle in our day-to-day lives as parents. Our kids' motivation to do tasks like homework, chores, practicing their sport or musical instrument. You know, all the things we find ourselves nagging, bribing, or even threatening them about just to check these tasks off our list. Jenny Drennan, an educational therapist in the LA area, reveals the underlying elements that contribute to our kids' level of motivation. And we both go granular and big picture about what might be at play, and then also how we not only survive the daily grind, but really allow our relationships with our kids to thrive and to help them unlock their own potential on their terms. It's a fun one, don't miss it. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that I think every parent out there has grappled with in the daily grind of just getting things done. That is the mystery of motivation. Why can't we get our kids to initiate their homework or their chores or any number of other things they know they have to do? What is it that we do that makes them dig in and refuse? Or on the other end, what contributes to our kids' inner sense of motivation? Should we intervene? My guest today is here to help us unpack it all. And I know we're going to leave this conversation with some really useful strategies to help us all navigate challenges both at school and at home. Jenny Drennan is a certified educational therapist and the founder of We Thrive Learning in the LA area. Her private practice specializes in supporting students with ADHD and math and language processing challenges. Her passion, work, and expertise has earned her recognition as one of the top 10 most influential educators by MSN, and she's been a featured speaker and guest in countless capacities. In fact, I listened to her talk on 2 separate podcasts and just had to have her talk with our audience. Welcome to the show, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me, Corey. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Same. So I just want to start with this. In your daily practice, you're working with kids who struggle, maybe more than a neurotypical student, with what we call task initiation and motivation. This is really a hallmark of having ADHD. But what you've done to really crack the code here truly applies to every kid and every family. So if a kid won't get off the couch and start their homework, despite all the things parents have tried to make for a less painful evening, what is happening here? Let's start with that.
Oh, there's so much that could be going on. There's so many ways we could unpack this. But one is, I think it really matters how curious we get. We must, as the parent or the adult, the caregiver in their lives, we need to get curious as to what could be happening, because their behavior is just a product of how something else that's going on for them, right? And what we're just seeing is avoidance, is what we're calling it. But in reality, we need to do a deeper dive to what's driving this avoidance. So there could be a multitude of things. I'll give you some. It could be the assignment's really hard and they're not motivated to get started on something that's challenging. It's like if someone told me go run 50 miles, I wouldn't be as motivated. It could be that they are sleep deprived. They haven't had enough sleep the night before, or, consecutively a few nights. And so they're really tired. They're, energized. Students with slow processing speed need time after school to sort of recharge, right? So they're not going to come home immediately and begin to do their homework. They've been trying to take in all this information at school and trying to hold things together. And so when they come home, they need a moment to kind of collect themselves and pull themselves together to sort of get back to something difficult. It could also be like dehydration, right? I mean, diet, nutrition. And then also they just need some minute. They just need a minute to themselves to get going on it. The other one is, this is really common with a lot of our students, is they're unclear about the expectations of the assignment. So they know they have to do, write a response to their history, but they don't actually understand, or there's so many executive function skills that are involved that the task is now really complex. And so they've got like a really foggy understanding of the task. And without a clear plan, they won't hit go.
That makes total sense. And I mean, I'm drawing a lot of parallels to myself. I feel like all humans struggle with this particular issue. And it's like thinking, going back to your first point, I don't want to work for an entire day where I'm very focused and I have all these expectations on me, come home and immediately start cooking dinner. Like, I too need a minute to kind of decompress. But I do think sometimes parents have this sense, or like this rosy sense of, oh, my kids are going to bound off the school bus or get out of the car, have a snack and get right to their homework so they can get it over with and move on. But
Yeah.
that's not really like realistic for most kids, it sounds like.
Especially our non-neurotypical peers, right? Which we all are neurodiverse, but our students with LDs, ADHD. What's consistent about ADHD is that everything is inconsistent. And what we know is that routines and structure really help all children and adults, right? It reduces the decision-making fatigue. They know what they need to do. They got it. However, with our kids, setting up routines is really hard. And sometimes our families too, families who may have ADHD, a child with ADHD, maybe someone else in the family also has it. And so maintaining consistent routines is really difficult. But yes, the routine would be able to help, like off the school bus, snack, homework. The other thing is if they are struggling with that, if they have homework to do, let's say all the things that I mentioned at the start of the podcast, are not them, right? They can do it. They feel competent enough to do it. They've got the energy. They got good sleep. Their nutrition's on great. Everything's going well. Then what they're telling us is, I need a little bit of a hit, like inertia. I need a little bit of dopamine, a little more excitement to get me going, right? Kind of like an email. Like when we sit down in the mornings and we write our email, I need to have my cup of coffee next to me. Like, it's just motivating to me to do that. So it's like looking for creative ways to make it a little more fun for them too. What's going to make it fun for them to begin this task? Our kids who have ADHD thrive off of novelty. They like to switch things up. They like to keep things new. And so, even doing your homework, maybe you do it outside. Maybe you do it on the couch. Maybe you do it in mom's desk. Just moving your environment around could give you a little bit of dopamine. Maybe you have your favorite drink next to you, or you have a weighted blanket on top of you. Anything that's going to make the experience, I guess, a bit more fun and comfortable.
Oh, I love that. I love that. But it also brings up a question for me. So we're talking about like routines and structures. How do you balance having like somewhat of a consistent routine with then also wanting to hit that novelty piece that changes it up a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So we need to keep things flexible, right? Not be too strict on it's 3:30. Like now you got to get to your homework, because we know things don't go as planned. And flexibility is also a skill that our children need to learn, that, we adapt and things don't always go as we plan for them. And now what do we do about it? Right. So it's, if in setting up a routine, it could be, hey, have a 30-minute downtime, do your thing, and including them in this conversation all the time. How long do you need to kind of collect yourself, right? What do you think is a reasonable amount of time? So that they feel they've got ownership in the plan and they're contributing to it. They're going to be much more likely to implement it and then work with you if something doesn't go as both of you have planned. So let's say they say, I need about 30, 45 minutes. Great. Okay. And you'll do a snack in between. And then it's like, all right, well, now where are you going to do your homework today? Right? Like you can do it over here. They've had, with our students, we create a menu of breaks, a menu of different places where they can go to, things that have worked for them. We also look at the environment that they're in, right? When my garage is really messy and disorganized, I don't want to walk into the garage. But if I take my time to sort of put it together, organize it, it's inviting. I don't mind going in there and pulling things out. Same things with our desks, right? And that's a challenge because I know a lot of our LD, ADHD students have, they're a little bit more scattered, right? And so it's supporting them in that sense too, because they want to work in an area that is inviting to them, right? That's what's going to help them to hit go. And if they have like messy areas or they're feeling really crowded or, it's really dark, all the doors are closed, we want to also consider where are they working so that we can start asking them when do we notice that they're doing well? Like when are they hitting go so that we can start adding more into their lives.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I mean, what I heard you say is like, let's give them choices within limits.
Mhm.
Like, you have, and it brings me back to those early days of parenting my kids when it's like two positive choices. Do you want the blue cup or the red cup? Like these are, you're not giving them a choice not to have a cup. So you're not giving them a choice not
Exactly.
to do the homework, but it's like, let's give them some freedom and agency within the requirements of what they have to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like a choice with a boundary.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the other sort of undertone, it's what I've heard you talk about on a couple of other podcasts is trying to kind of move the agency away from the parent. Like it
Mhm.
isn't the parent's agenda, it's the kid's agenda, which I do think is very difficult when you have a kid who is struggling in school, like school sends you, you get 3 missing assignment notices before the kid gets home. And then you know, as a parent, you're stressed out about that and you're like, okay, now we need a system. Like you need to do your homework, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of like our stress and our agenda kind of coming into it. So can you talk about that? And like how does that affect a kid's motivation?
Yeah. So Elaine and Diane Dumpster from Impact Parents they do a great job of explaining that, as a parent, if we hold 80% of the agenda, then the child's only responsible for holding 20%, right? If we hold, 50, then they hold 50. But it's always adds up to 100. And so we want to play with how much of this agenda am I holding on to? And then get curious as to what's going on for me too. So let's say, there's a worry a parent gets triggered. There are 3 missing assignments now, right? And now you have a whole agenda in your head of how you're going to start this conversation with your child. You already have the solution planned out. You're ready to go. And when your child gets home from school, they're not expecting this conversation to happen. They may or may not be, right? Let's say they're not though. And so it's coming out to them out of left wing, like, okay, was not ready for this. Especially our LD students or ADHD, they're slow processors. And so we need to sort of come into the conversation with gentleness, I guess, so that like they know that this conversation is going to happen. So maybe send them a quick text or something, but then also collaborating with them on what could be going on here, right? Getting curious as to what are the missing assignments what came in the way. Maybe they're all related to math, right? So then we're noticing a pattern here. What's going on in math? Do we need to give this a closer look? Should we get outside support? An evaluation if we're seeing that they're completely avoiding math or, once they get older, they don't want to go to math class, for example. So, really getting curious as to what is actually happening. Maybe it's just writing assignments or reading, right? And so that's giving us more information. And then offering support. Again, like always, I'm here to support you if you need it. We don't want to provide solutions for our kids because then they don't develop the skills to develop their own solutions, right? It's almost like learned helplessness. They
Mhm.
rely on us to provide the solutions. And so then they don't trust themselves because they've never made a decision for themselves. And so, it's hard for them to think about something and then actually say, okay, I'm going to do it and trust and figure it out. So we really always want to be including in these conversations with them. But I think a big part of it all is also understanding their values, right? So knowing what their values are. And for the littles, this is hard, but we can point out their values for them. Our older students should know what their values are. This is part of adulting, right? Becoming older and really becoming self-aware of who you are. When we are driven by extrinsic rewards like grades or punishments or money, right? This is why bribing doesn't help our kids. Um, happiness will happen temporarily. Life satisfaction will peak a little bit and then you come back down to your baseline levels. But when you're pursuing goals, right? When you're doing something because you're intrinsically motivated, which means that they align with your values, with your interests, that you feel competent, then you're much more likely, it's got a different energy. You're going to hit go because you want to hit go, because it's meaningful to you, because there's something, it's personal growth, self-improvement, you're helping others. There's something more there. And so if we can figure out, tie whatever they're doing to something that they value, right? Then they're much more likely to be motivated to do it. This is why body doubling is really helpful for a lot of kids, because it's a sense of belonging, right? They're doing work with someone else, even if that person isn't doing the same type of work. Just having a person presence there is really helpful, because again, it's aligning with their values of belonging and working as a team.
What did you call that? Body doubling?
Yes, body doubling. Oh, it's such
Okay.
a great, yeah. So like, if I'm working here, let's say I'm at my kitchen, like, working on the table, or mom and or dad are cooking in the kitchen, that's body doubling. It's the proximity that they're doing something next to you. This is why coffee shops are so, are so helpful. Like college students, they love going to coffee shops to do work.
That is amazing. I've never heard that term, but it makes so much sense. And it's also like I'm picturing, I mean, my own family in the home. Like if I'm doing something in the kitchen and the kids are doing their homework, we're all sort of like working on something, and it adds to a sense of community. Like, okay, this
Yeah.
is the time we're all kind of working on our own things. I love that.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's so important for kids to become aware of what they like, right? They need to
Mhm.
know, oh, I do like working with others, so that they do more of that. Or sometimes some kids are like, I really just like reading in my bed and I like to do it right before I go to sleep. So it's like understanding what they like, what their interests are, is going to help them do more of that, right? That's part of becoming self-aware, which we know they need to thrive in college.
I also want to go back to what you were saying about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And I think that one of the things that we've talked about many times on this podcast, particularly this season, the theme is coming up that we have to let our kids fail in order for
Mhm.
them to, take ownership of anything. Like if we are just like holding with this vice grip on making sure they're tracking on every single goal and then doing things for them, how then are they ever going to see that, like, what this means to me, or develop that inner voice or that sense of inner
Yeah.
fulfillment or the goals, right?
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. So, we always we want students to understand why this is valuable to them, right? Why, hey, we're noticing 3 missing assignments, or you're failing. Let's say they're failing history and it's, they get the content. They're just the subject, the homework is boring for them, right?
Hmm.
So it's coming with figuring out, we always work with parents as to, okay, we want them to take ownership of this, because clearly they're not right now, right? They've got us to be reminding them, like, you've got this homework, what are you going to do for your test, etc. So to include them in the conversation and really paint a picture as to, are you cool with going to summer school or not, right? Because then it's like, all right, if they say yes, then we go to summer school. If they say no, well, okay, well, what kind of support do you need to help you not get there? But then again, that now they're taking agency. They're making a decision. They have a realistic picture of what plan A would look like and what plan B would look like, right? And now they can make an informed decision. Sometimes our kids don't really understand the natural consequences that come afterwards, right? And so painting, I'd love to sit down with you to talk about what your current math grade is and, what your plan is for this. And I'll be fine with whatever you choose. I just really want you to make an informed decision. So, and I know that's really difficult for a lot of parents, because they don't want their kid to go to summer school and they don't want their kid to fail. But then again, we want to think of everything in the long run, right? So, okay, if I step in and tell them what to do, what sort of skill am I building for them, right? Like, am I doing more harm or am I helping them? And then also, again, a lot of our kids are working against their strengths because
Mm.
they're taking all these accelerated courses because they want, it's for how do they look to others, their peers? It's competition, it's gratification. Like I'm pleasing my parents, I'm doing this because I'm trying to get into X, Y, and Z college. And so I think that's a pretty narrow view of success. And so when students put a lot of pressure on themselves to outperform and only do things because, others are doing them around them. And I get the social pressure is hard, especially in environments where, they're very high performing, right? Parents, the kids, the school, everyone's feeling the pressure. But I do notice that those kids get depleted of all their resources quickly and quickly run out of gas because they're working, first of all, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're not sleeping, they're not, doing fun things that bring them joy. And then they're enrolling in courses that are playing against their strengths. So it takes them longer to do, they're working twice as hard for things. So, it's really, I think motivation is really intricate and complex.
It absolutely is. And you basically just touched on the entire reason that we have this podcast is to talk about like how can we raise awareness of like just redefining success because it is not the acceptance letter from XYZ college, you
Right.
know. It's that is not it. And I know you and I both just recently read the book Never Enough. And
Uh-huh.
I will say it definitely hit me in the gut in terms of like
Yeah.
the author breaks down what does happiness actually look like and in it how it relates to college. Like it you have to look for a college that actually embodies all of your own values as a student.
Yeah.
So exactly what you touched on. It isn't the name of the college. It's like is it in a small town because that's kind of your vibe? Do they have professors who are super quirky and like take students out to dinner in small groups, you know? Do they have like a some kind of weird frisbee team that might be cool? Like those are actually the factors that lead kids to discover who they are further and then leads to their happiness
Yeah.
later.
No, absolutely. I always tell our kids, look, where you get into college, that's, we'll support it. And, where you want to go, like, we never want to squash on anyone's dreams, right? And we do want them to know that the research shows that it doesn't matter the college itself, it's the experience that the child has in the college. So everything that you said, right? The relationships with their teachers, the clubs that they're getting involved in, extracurriculars, internships, their friends, like fraternity, sororities, all of this stuff is what makes the college experience. And so when you can have a student that's going to a really top notch college and, they're not enjoying their time there versus another student who takes full advantage, is enjoying, thriving in this environment. You're going to see very different results in life satisfaction.
Yeah. And the idea of, the three missing assignments, let's go to that, back to that as like a middle schooler. I think what happens in this like pressure cooker culture is that the parents, to use your word, catastrophize that. And
Yes.
they're thinking, like you said, they get triggered and it because we are so forward thinking. It's like, oh,
Yes.
these three missing assignments means a failed grade, which means summer school, which means they can't do the internship or whatever. It's like your brain goes 12 steps down the road when the kid
Yeah.
is actually like at step one in the moment, you know?
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think also, right, that we as the adult, again, we can't change another person. The only thing we have control of is like how are we reacting and how are we responding, or how are we supporting. So I think we as the adults, we need to see, okay, what are the triggers? What are my common triggers, right? Because if we go into a conversation and we're pretty upset, they're going to feel that and we can't hide it. These
Mm-hmm.
kids are like, they're very attuned to how we're feeling and all of the things. So, going into it with a much more a different perspective, like something here must be going on, and really trying to take it one step at a time. Because like you said, we're like looking into, gosh, how this is going to impact them 10 years from now, right? Or they have a messy room. No one's ever going to want to live with them.
Right.
So we jump ahead decades. And so it's always thinking, okay, well, taking it because they feel that pressure. And the more we come to them with, we've got to change things now. This is the way you're going to do it. The more they're going to resist. Especially teenagers, they're at that point where, I think this is so hard because they're in a moment where at times they do need our support. They do, they're going to come to us and look for us for support. And then, but at the same time, they're trying to form their own identity and trying to separate themselves from us. Right. And so, and they're grappling with that, and that's frustrating to them as well. But I think, including them, again, just always including them in conversation as to what's just the next thing that we can do here. Just that, that next, even if it's a half step that we can take so that they're not feeling this overwhelm or stress to change happen quickly, or I need to change things now, or we got to do all 5 things right now. And let's just take it, because if we do 5 things, we're trying to change 5 things, nothing's going to change. Right? It's too much for everyone to change. It's got to happen slow. So it's like, just what's the next little thing that we can take care of here, so that we can start thinking, okay, and then after that, we slowly start building upon things.
Yeah. And maybe it's just like a very simple and subtle shift in your language. I have learned to do
Yes.
this as a parent about, instead of, this is what you need to do. It's like, well, what do you think we should do? I mean, just posing it as a question.
Yeah. And
Like,
need, right? That's
yeah,
another one. It's like, well, do we actually need it? And then when we use the we, right, then you're taking ownership there as well. So it's like, what do you need to do? So that, we
exactly.
always want to be transferring that ownership to them.
Yeah, I was laughing. You gave an example talking about the kid's backpack, and I was laughing because my middle schooler, my oldest one, his backpack in 7th grade was, I mean, it was hilarious. And his locker was,
Humor's great
wow.
though to use here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, if I were to go to school and clean out his locker, what does that accomplish? It's so hard not to, though, when you see the backpack and the binder and you're like, ooh, I could like really organize this so perfectly for them. What
Yeah.
is that doing for them, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing is like, okay, you'll organize it, but because it's not their way of organizing it, they're
Hmm.
not going to sustain it. Right. And
Yeah.
then so it's, I have students who were like, how the heck is this functioning for you? But it is. There's a student who his folder is his laptop, right? He puts all the papers in between his laptop, and that's what he folds. Hasn't lost anything. So is it working for him? At the moment it is. Is it sustainable? Probably not. But he's got a system where once a week he takes it all out and he sorts. Okay, well, it's working for him until things go haywire, then we'll figure it out. And he knows that. He understands that, okay, this is works now, perhaps next year it won't. So just having that open mindset is helpful. But at least he doesn't feel like I'm broken, so someone's coming in to fix this for me, right? It's like, no, we trust this is working for you. My way isn't the right way. This is your way, and that's fine.
Yeah, I love like what you said at the beginning about ADHD being the consistency is inconsistency. I think like what I've learned in this work is that if you just throw a bunch of executive functioning tools at someone, then like you said, they're not taking ownership. It's coming from the top down, so it's not going to
Yeah,
be sustainable basically.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not the brain, right? It develops and strengthens what it uses. And so if we're
Mm.
not strengthening and develop those problem solving skills, they're not going to develop them. We need to give this time.
And eventually they're going to leave us. And we can't, we have to feel proud of the ways that we've like let them take ownership of those things so that we can feel confident that they're going to be okay when they leave home.
Yeah. There's a student now who we have who is she's a junior now, going into her senior next year. But she needs an alarm to shake the bed for her to actually wake up, right? Like she's got a really hard time waking up. And so she really wants to go to a 4-year college. Mom, understandably, is really kind of concerned that when she gets there, she's, there's so many things that she's, mom thinks need to be developed. And we agree. Like one is you need to know how to get up out of bed and how to go into bed at a decent time. And so her buy-in, right, is that she wants to go to a 4-year college. So we're working with her right now on what's going to help her so that she can get out of bed on a decent time. And, is it really that she needs an alarm that really shakes the bed, or is there something there that's causing her to sleep in, for her body to want to sleep in that late, or is asking her for more time, right? So we're always looking as to what's the buy-in for this child. And we don't want it to be, again, extrinsic rewards, like, I'll give you $5 for doing this. But we do, for her, it's, she wants to go to college, and, she wants to experience what that is, living in a dorm and all. And so that's her motivation. So I think that's really important too, to always think about what's underlying all of this. How can I tie this back to something that they see important for them?
Well, and on that example in particular, I don't know what the parents have been doing. Like, in that scenario, I'm picturing parents maybe rescuing at the last minute. Like, okay, you set your alarm, but you're not up by
Yes.
7:30, so I'm going to go in and shake the bed. Like, what would happen if you just let her oversleep and be late to school one time, two times? I mean, maybe it would
Yeah.
take 10 times, but
Yeah. Coming up, and for her to understand, okay, and also we need to know, like, do I hear the alarm the first time, the second time? Am I ignoring it? Like,
mhm.
or do I automatic? There's so many things that could be coming in the way of the child just getting up when we're expecting them to. Because I can wake up off of one alarm. My husband might need 5 alarms to wake up, right? We're just different. And
Yeah.
so understanding, how I function isn't how they function. But then again, having an open conversation with them, like, what is truly coming in the way? If they really are ignoring it, and they want you to come in, then it's like, you guys got to come up with a plan as to, okay, I'm happy to remind you once, and then after that, it's on you, right? So
Yeah.
again, transferring the ownership to them so that they see, okay, like, they're really not going to come in here to get me up. Like, it's on me, right, to
Yep.
do this. So yeah, and sticking to what we say, as hard as it is, because as soon as we, like, oh gosh, now I got to go in and wake them up. I don't want them to be late. I don't want to be late for work.
Mhm.
Like, we need to actually stick to it. Otherwise, we're not helping them.
Yep. Yep, exactly. It reminds me of the thing with just waking up in the morning. Like, we had a rule in my house that you couldn't get on a screen of any kind on the weekends until like 7:30. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, lo and behold, before that rule was nobody wanted to get up for school. But then as soon as, 6 a.m. on Saturday, they're bebopping around ready to do whatever. I'm like, but that's an example of like when kids are motivated to do something, they make it happen,
They'll figure it
you know?
out. They will
Yeah.
figure it out. There's all these kids are really smart, right? They're some of the most creative kids we can ever come across. And they've got all the answers. They know themselves better than anyone else. They've got the answers. We just need to trust that they've got it, and that we're there to support, and really just have these conversations with them so that they don't feel like they're broken, like we're judging them, we're catastrophizing, right? Really just coming at them as to, hey, this is what's going on, laying it all down really matter of factly, and now what's the plan for it?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, well, we have a couple orders of business to attend to. The first is we like to ask our guests this season, what books do you think that we should be reading? So I know you have a couple actually that you want to
Oh,
talk to us about.
yeah, there's so many. Okay, so you mentioned Jennifer Wallace's book, Never Enough, an excellent book that she gives. She goes into giving strategies as to how we can do self support ourselves, and how we can support our family, and sort of how do we make some change in society to, with all this pressure, this academic and high performing pressure that our kids are feeling right now. The next one is Parenting with Impact by Elaine Taylor Klaus and Diane Dempster. She was a contributor. But it's, if your child has ADHD, I highly recommend this book. Like, there's nothing, I haven't read anything better out there. They get it. They got it all down. And then The Self-Driven Child by William Stixrud and Ned Johnson. It's just what, that's the book. These are books that I recommend to all parents to read. The Self-Driven Child goes into a lot of science, into why things, how we can support our children so that they're self-driven, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's a fun read, even though it's very science-based. They go in and they answer questions that parents have asked them. And then their second book, How Do I Say It, is how do I approach conversations with my child on these, delicate topics. So they really sort of scaffold the support.
I love that. That one, the Ned Johnson book, has been on my list, embarrassingly, for a long time.
Oh,
So
you gotta get to it.
because I think it's in the conversation right now. Lots of people talking
Oh,
about it. So
it's
I'm gonna
so
have to
good.
read.
I've like read it 3 times. It's that
I
good.
love that. I love that. Okay, wonderful. So, Jenny, as I predicted, this has been such an engaging, lovely conversation.
Oh,
And I do consider you really an expert in helping kids with ADHD and learning disabilities. You are an expert in executive function support and family support in these things. And how do people find you if they want to work with you?
well, thank you for that. No, it's been lovely to chat here with you. It's been really fun. Um, I think you and I could keep going on this.
Yep, I agree.
But people can find us at wethrive.learning.com. And they can schedule consultation. They can download a free resource on how to develop ES skills organically. And then we have a parent Facebook group too. It's completely free to parents. So if they go to our website and they head over to the Facebook tab, they can join our Facebook group there.
Awesome. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Like I said, it was just a pleasure. And I think our audience has really benefited from listening to some of what we talked about today. So thanks for coming.
It's been so fun. Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Forget What You Learned, hosted by me, Corey Greenberg. As always, our goal is to allow you to zoom out on the snapshot of your family's life and answer the question, are my kids thriving? We're here to inspire you to make those small and maybe big changes to answer yes. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pacific Preparatory and Tutor Corps, sister organizations committed to educating students with an innovative and holistic approach in today's digital world. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating and review. See you next time.